All right, folks, we are going to be being ready to roll as we start this sound check. I'm going to begin in the chambers to my left with Councilor Scully.
I can hear it.
I found it. Perfect. Okay. Problem solved. Wonderful.
I hear and see, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilor Smith.
I can see and hear. Thanks.
Perfect. Mayor Seitz.
I can see and hear.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Looks good.
Thank you. Councilor Seymour.
All systems go.
Councilor Bowles.
All good here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, staff, if you guys can give us a quick sound check. We are going to begin from the top, and at the next point, we will be going live here literally in a minute or two. I'm going to begin with Amy Johnson.
I am here.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Andrew Spurgeon.
I'm here. Thank you, Michelle.
And it looks like we have an outside partner, Eric Shakal. Apologies if I'm mangling your name.
That's okay. Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Fred Kellum.
I'm here. Thank you, Michelle.
Keith Klein.
I'm here. Thank you, Michelle.
Jeff Plank.
I'm here. Thank you, Michelle.
Jody Andrews.
Yes, Michelle, ready to go. Thank you.
Cody Erb. Cody, I saw your mic go green. We did not catch you on the sound check. Can you try one more time?
I'm here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Matthew Boko.
I'm here, Michelle. Thank you.
Mikkel Wright.
Michael Wright, but I'm here and thank you.
Apologies. Nathan Ank.
I'm here and thank you.
Nathan Roseman.
Nathan is here. Thank you.
Nicole Ankeny.
I'm here, Michelle. Thank you.
Brian Heckerness.
Good evening, Michelle.
Tammy Hitchens. Tammy, we saw your mic go green. We did not get sound. Can you try again, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. And Tom Klein.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the sound check. If everybody can sit tight for just a moment, and we'll get rolling. Thank you.
My apologies. It's not rolling yet, or do you want me to go ahead and start?
You are good to go.
Welcome, everyone, to the July 12th pre-meeting. I'm going to ask City Clerk Parker to take the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Present.
Mayor Seitz.
Here.
Councilor Seymour.
Here.
Councilor Scully. Here. Councilor Smith. Present. And Councilor Bowles.
Here.
Tonight's pre-meeting agenda includes one item, which is a proposed executive session for City Council. Mr. Frankel, would you please read this title into the record?
I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The proposed executive session for this afternoon is to consult with the city attorney regarding legal issues associated with collective bargaining. proposed ballot language, and proposed ordinance content, and to discuss the city's position on issues subject to formal negotiation pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 1113C78 and Colorado Revised Statute 246402 4B and E1.
Members of council, having heard the proposed executive session title, I will poll each of you to ascertain whether you support city council going into an executive session under that subject. I'm going to start on my right. Councilor Scully,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Demont,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Voles.
Yes.
Council has decided, and the mayor as well. Council has decided to go into executive session. The time is 6:17. We will join for the full meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you. We're just waiting for one more to join us, and then we'll start in just a moment. City Clerk Parker, are you ready for me to start? Welcome, everyone. I am Mayor Anita Seitz, and the council and I welcome you to the July 12th City Council meeting. As of June 14th, the city has resumed meeting in person for City Council meetings with the option of virtual participation by council and staff as necessary. In addition to in-person attendance, the community may also participate remotely by watching the live stream on the city YouTube channel or by dialing in by phone with the instructions on the meeting agenda webpage. We continue to support multiple opportunities for public comment, including in-person testimony, email, voicemail, and live remote audio. Many modifications have been made to council chambers for the safety of council and staff and our participants. This includes spacing council on the dais and limiting the number of staff participation in person. The agenda section of the city website is the best place to check for details on participating in council meetings. The webpage is www.cityofwestminster.us/agendas. Now I ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge to the flag of the United States of America.
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
City Clerk Parker, can you please lead the roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Demott,
Present.
Mayor Seitz,
Here.
Councilor Seymour,
Here.
Councilor Scully, here, Councilor Smith, present, and Councilor Bowles.
Here.
The next item on our agenda is the consideration of the meeting minutes from the preceding meeting. Is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the June 28th, 2021 meeting as presented.
Councilor Seymour.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from the prior meeting. Can I get a voice vote from everyone? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Next, we have public comment. Presentations. There are no presentations tonight, so next will be public comments. The public comment portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the public to communicate with the City Council on any topic they choose, unless there is a topic for which a public hearing is also scheduled. This evening, we have one public hearing on a proposed preliminary development plan amendment for Applewood Point Senior Living at Walnut Grove. Anyone wishing to speak on that item, please hold your comments until we open the public hearing later in the evening. The current public comment portion of the meeting is not intended to be conversational, but rather a direct communication from the public to their representatives. There are now 4 methods available for participation in public comment. You may testify in person, submit written email testimony, record a voicemail to be played back during the meeting, or request to speak live via the remote meeting link through the City Clerk's office. Please see the posted agenda for details on how to participate using any of the methods available. At this time, I would ask the City Clerk to please summarize the number of participants this evening and introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this time, we have 3 people who have signed up to speak in person. No one requested to speak live via the meeting link, and we will play back 1 voicemail after our 3 in-person residents have spoken. Also, there were no emails submitted by the deadline that were forwarded to council today. So at this time, I will call our 3 speakers in the following order. Our first speaker is Joe Janicki, followed by Kathleen Dodero, and finally, John Palmer. So Mr. Janicki, if you'd like to approach the podium, you have 5 minutes to address the City Council.
Good evening. My name is Joe Janicki, and I'm involved in the Westminster recall. And I want to say that I'm very disappointed in the lack of transparency from the legacy members of City Council. And by legacy members, I mean those that have been around for the last 6 or 8 years or so. It doesn't include more newly elected members like Mr. Dumont and Mr. Seymour and Lindsay Smith. The city clerk's office has been difficult, at the very best, to deal with. Their lack of cooperation and transparency is very disappointing, although again, not unexpected. And I hope that the citizens of Westminster are able to have their day and ballots counted accurately. We're still trying to find out where the ballots are going to be counted and how poll watchers will be able to participate in that process. And I imagine that you'll have it ironed out in the next few days and you'll be able to make it public to those interested parties. Guess that's it. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker has asked to be removed from the list. So our next live speaker will be Mr. John Palmer. You can approach the podium and you have 5 minutes to address the City Council.
Good evening. A couple of things. First, I'd like to remind everybody that got a ballot to please get it filled out, get it turned back in for the upcoming recall election on July 20th. Next, when and where will the election results be posted for the recall election? If we could get that answered or get that on the city website, please. Next, I'd like to speak about the Environmental Advisory Board meeting that I attended last. I came in as a caller one. The chairperson, Buckley, insisted that I identify myself or leave the meeting. There were other people also there that she treated in the same fashion. Later in the meeting, she stated not once, not twice, but several times how rude the people were that wouldn't identify themselves. Now, I've been to several meetings, several online meetings, several council meetings. I've never once been asked to identify myself. Not once. Very disappointing that our chairperson is permitted to do that. And furthermore, that the city representative, Paul Smeekum, continues to let this stuff go on unaddressed. Now, they're going to say there's no proof of this. That's because there's no recording. I believe I addressed that in the email to all of you folks some 60 days ago now. There's no reason that these meetings shouldn't be recorded. Thank you.
And at this time, we will play back one voicemail that was received by the deadline on our public comment voicemail system. I just want to let everyone know it takes a few moments to load. We're using a new system to play back our messages. So if you would please just be patient, it takes a few seconds to get these rolling. Thanks so much.
Hello, Mayor Seitz, Mayor Pro Tem Dumont, and City Councilors. This is Karen Fox Elwell, the President and CEO of Growing Home, and I wanted to speak today and express our deep appreciation to the City of Westminster for all of your support since the beginning of the pandemic in helping Growing Home to meet the increased need for food access in our community. We have been so grateful to the city's partnership for the use of the MAP Recreation Center, the use of some of the city staff, staff and vehicles, as well as other resources, including the CARES Act funding and some trucks to assist with all of our support. We are so thankful to the City of Westminster and wanted to express that. Today, during the City Manager's comments, we'll be showing a short video of some of our staff and community members expressing their deep appreciation to all of you, and just wanted to take this moment also to speak on our extreme appreciation. So thank you so much. Growing Home looks forward to continuing to partner with the City of Westminster to create a more thriving and equitable Westminster and North Metro Denver area. So thank you so much for your support. Growing Home looks forward to continuing to partner with the City of Westminster to create a more thriving and equitable Westminster and North Metro Denver area. So thank you so much for your support.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. The next item before us is the report of city officials. City Manager Tripp is joining us remotely. I will ask, I'm not sure if it is going to be City Manager Tripp or Deputy City Manager Adore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here. I have 3 comments tonight. The last one that I'll queue up now, but we won't begin, is a short presentation by Growing Home. I'd like to first of all update you, Mayor and Council, and the community that based on your request and our desire to work with the Westminster Police Department and its employees in moving forward here on their question of collective bargaining, myself and Deputy City Manager Opie and Police Chief Tim Carlson met last week with a group of about 35 in-house and maybe 10 or 15 employees who were on the street in a virtual sense, talking about police labor relations and issues that were important to police officers. I want to report it was an outstanding, open conversation. I really appreciated that conversation. Subsequently, Barbara, Tim, and I met with the FOP leadership and had some conversation about the issue of collective bargaining and just police officer and non-sworn and leadership relationships and how we move together. I thought it was very positive. It was exactly what I'd hoped for the beginning of such a conversation. I'm pleased to tell you that they acknowledge that the council and the staff has been really supportive of police officers in the last few years, particularly in a number of expressed ways: wages, benefits, FPPA retirement program, a number of investments in equipment training, and of course, many officers that were added to the force since 2015. So thank you, Council, for the opportunity to do that. I'll continue to report back to you weekly on our progress. The progress will be great, and I appreciate that. The second item tonight is that we had a post-meeting item that was scheduled that will be postponed, and it's related to information we've gained in polling about the potential of an election and election items this year. We're hoping that item can be on the agenda next Monday. That's what we're shooting for, is the 19th. Finally, I want to ask that we run a video from Growing Home and that was sent to us, and it's very touching, expressing their appreciation for our relationship. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Express our deep appreciation to the City of Westminster for your ongoing partnership in food distribution.
Thank you so much for your support, dedication, friendship, and partnership. It's made a huge difference not only to the community, but to Growing Home.
Estoy muy agradecida con la ciudad por habernos prestado el MAC. Estuvimos muy contentos. Gracias por toda su hospitalidad. En serio, nos sentimos como en casa.
I'd just like to say thank you so much to the City of Westminster for all the help you've provided to us in the last year.
Thank you, guys. for volunteering with us, helping us, to all of the city employees.
I just wanted to take a moment to express deep appreciation and gratitude for everyone that was involved in supporting the food distribution efforts in ensuring that families had food on the table.
In the first quarter of 2021, we distributed over 262,000 pounds of food to nearly 2,500 households, comprised of 10,000 people. This is nearly 60,000 meals that we provided to the community. The City of Westminster's partnership has been critical in making this impact.
It's been a lot of hard work and even at times fun. From self-driving vehicles to a broken foot, even to friendly ghost sightings. It's been an adventure and one I look forward to continuing in the future.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you all so, so much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll miss you guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all so, so much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll miss you guys. Bye.
Thank you much. Thank you so much to the Growing Home team. Obviously, there was a little bit of an audio-visual issue there, a little bit of a delay, but appreciate that video. City Manager Tripp, do you have any further comments?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is City Council comments. Do any of my colleagues have anything to report or comments they'd like to make? Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a very busy week, and it's been a lot of fun because I've gotten to be out in the public, and that's always so enjoyable. First of all, I wanted to compliment our city, especially our fire department and our PD on the July 4th celebration. It was really great. It was so much fun to hand out little flag pens to all of our residents, and they were so grateful. Everybody just really was happy to be there, and it was quite a celebration. So thank you to our fire department and our PD for keeping us safe that night and helping us put that on, and to our Parks and Recreation department as well. Almost forgot. And then Growing Home, thank you so much for your message tonight. That was very, very wonderful to hear. I'm so proud that we could be of help to you during this very harsh time of COVID. I've had a lot of meetings this week, so bear with me as I go through them. The first one was the Parks, Recreation, Library Open Space meeting last Thursday night. And it was a long meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about a lot of different things. I'm always amazed at how much our Parks Department does, and how very involved our volunteers on that board are involved in our city. We had a presentation about the transportation and mobility plan, and it was the same presentation we received as a council. But it was always good to hear it a second time. And then we had a tour of the facility. We got to see the new area at the fitness center. I believe council also had this tour when we did the library kiosks, but now they have the turf in there. So it was kind of fun because we got to walk out on the turf and play on the machines or the different the facilities. We had a long discussion about the mini grants. And they are going to delay immediate awarding of mini grants, and they're talking about approaching it in a different way. So it would be a rolling grant instead, so we would be able to administer more grants throughout the year, and you wouldn't have to miss deadlines. So I thought that was a really great conversation, and that is a very shortened, abbreviated conversation that I just put together there because it went on for a really long time. They talked about, oh my gosh, I can't even read my notes because there was so much. We had an introduction of Lance Johnson. I want to welcome him on as our interim director. He did a really nice job facilitating the meeting and gave us a lot of great information. And I appreciate how he must wear many hats now. As many of you know, he was in charge of our golf courses for many years. But now he's moved up to the interim director, and so he wears many hats. They are still talking about the renaming of parks. There's another one coming
But now we have a process in place so that we can go through that new process. And let's see, the Sparklers tournament was really successful, and Mayor Seitz, they complimented you on your awesome arm. So I was very impressed. Golf is up, and it is, we don't even have enough people to staff everything we need to cover. So that was a lot of the conversation, as well as how understaffed we are in the Parks Department and how we are struggling to hire people. And it's really just not enough applicants. So if you need a job, apply to our Parks and Recreation Department. I'm sure they'd love to hire you. And then we talked about Stanley Lake and all the paddle boaters and the kayaks and how many people are utilizing the state park. So obviously just tremendous amount of work. And I just couldn't even keep up with all the notes. So doing great work there. And then on Saturday, I had the great privilege of attending a kind of like a ribbon cutting for one of our grant recipients, Brittany Terrace Homeowners Association, took a little piece of land in their development and xeriscaped it. And they received a grant from Westminster, a matching fund grant. So they came up with half the funds and then we matched it as a city. And this is just a lovely area. So if you drive into their townhome area, it's on a corner. They have a little book library. They have an art library across the street. All the residents came out. It was just such a great celebration. And it really goes to show what a community can do when they come together and they work as neighbors and friends. They also said they have a lot of work left to do because they have a big leak in their system and it is costing them a lot of money. And they are working on plans to eliminate most of the grass area in their townhome area. So I really appreciate how they were thinking outside the box and really enjoyed that time on Saturday morning. And then finally, we had the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport meeting this morning. Another meeting that had a lot of information. It also went over by almost an hour. And so there was a lot to be discussed there. We had a lot of people who gave public comment. And a lot of our conversation was about how can we better respond to the public comment, because the public makes comments, but we don't always answer back during the meeting. And there seems to be a misstep happening somewhere where they're not getting responses to their questions. So we tried during the meeting to address the questions that we had heard that came up. And we also talked about how could we be more responsive to the public. We had a presentation by Emory Riddle, Aviation School. And they talked about how they had tested equipment that you could put onto an airplane that would mitigate the sound. And it is possible to do, but it causes the planes to hesitate and stutter, which is a great concern. So that is probably not going to be an option for us. And then we talked for a lengthy period of time about the strategic business plan. Folks, you need to get on those websites. There's a lot of public comment opportunity, a lot of public meetings coming up, and they're going to be discussing that strategic business plan. Jefferson County Commissioners will have a public briefing on it. I'm sorry, it's not open to the public, but a briefing on it on August 10th. They are going to open it to the two boards and allow us to listen in. So I'll try my best to make sure I keep that evening open, and I'll try to also tune into that. A lot of requests for slowing down, to hear more and think more and examine more. And I really appreciated those comments. I think that sometimes we try to rush through our decisions a little too much, and we don't take time to think through them. And we're making huge decisions. We're making decisions that are going to impact our community for years to come. And personally, I like the idea of slowing down a little bit. So I hope that we will slow down a little bit on this noise roundtable so that we can also hear a little bit more of what the public is saying. I don't think there's any rush. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Scully. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. Ronald Reagan said, "Freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit." We look across the world today at countries like Cuba, where they're fighting for for their freedom, you reflect on the 4th of July that we just celebrated and realize how lucky we are to live in this country. So with that said, the City Parks Department, Police Department, and Fire Department, thank you as well. I want to join Councilor Scully in thanking them. Amazing event. People were very happy to be out and be able to look each other in the eye and just be Americans together. And it was a great day. The other thing that I attended in the last week is the Civic Academy that the city's putting on. Great turnout. I really enjoyed the conversation that those of us who were able to make it had with the varying different people who came. Definitely a great group of people with a diversity of thought, and I think that's going to be a great opportunity for people to engage in their government, because that's really what it's all about, what we do here. So I appreciate all the efforts that staff is putting into that so that people can learn more about the city government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demont. Are there any other comments, questions? All right, I will go briefly. First, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that my colleague, Councilor Smith, has some exciting personal news. And I know that all of us wish her well and want to congratulate her on her upcoming nuptials. So congratulations. And I think we should all give her a round of applause. We have not been in this room for 2 weeks. So I have a little bit of an update to give, but I will be brief. Councilor Scully already mentioned the first item that I was going to bring up, which was the Triple Crown Sparkler Tournament that was held in Westminster, as it always is. For those of you that are not familiar with what Triple Crown is, it's the girls' fast pitch softball tournament. Participants are 20 years old or younger. It is the largest fast pitch softball tournament in the United States. There were 800 teams from 45 states. Westminster alone, the confirmed lodging, this is what was tracked, not coaches and family members and fans that came separately. We had over 3,000 hotel room nights. So really a huge economic boost for the city. And on Wednesday night, when I think Parks and Rec was overly generous in their description of my first pitch, no scouts came up to me afterwards. There were roughly 20,000 folks in attendance or watching on televised because it was all live televised. So no pressure there. But it was wonderful to see so many girls and young women coming together, enjoying the amenities that we offer our residents every day. So make no mistake, we're able to be attractive to this national tournament because of the care and effort that have gone into our parks and our open space. So I just want to say thank you to the legacy of stewardship and building a great quality of life here in Westminster to city staff. Also on Wednesday night, I, in addition to all of my colleagues, attended the Civics Academy, and it was wonderful. We had 18 individuals that want to learn more about local government, how Westminster works, and are going to be coming weekly. City staff did a great job putting this together. And it really, when I first got on council, one of the initiatives is we wanted a more engaged, inclusive community, and wow, are people engaged. So this was a wonderful night. I do have to give a special acknowledgement to Councilor Voles, who constantly pushed for this and was one of the people who helped get this across the finish line. But I think enjoyed by all of us. Next, Mayor Pro Tem Demont and I attended the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting. This is US 36, a coalition that advocates on transportation issues. So we had a federal lobbyist gave kind of an update on what was going on with the transportation bill, the RISE grant, a few other things. Then we had an update from the state lobbyist letting us know how the session ended, what's on the horizon. We talked about what we want to do as a group going into the following year. Then there was an update on the RTD Accountability Committee. And actually Westminster's Deborah Baskett gave that report. So it was a great meeting and good to hear from our neighbors as to what's going on with them. Then on Friday, I met with all of the mayors in Adams County with RTD Director Vince Busick to get an update on what's going on in RTD, to hear a little bit more about the Accountability Committee, how things are going. So that's always a wonderful meeting because transportation and transit, we want to make sure the North area, which hasn't traditionally gotten our fair share, that we have advocates at the table talking about how our residents need to use transit. So I really appreciate the opportunity that Director Busick gives us to advocate for each of our communities. And so that's where I'll end. I do want to say thank you to people who participate in our meetings, either by attending, speaking, calling in, or emailing council. Our goal is to have an engaged community, and sometimes that means getting critical feedback. But that's part of the process, and we're always here to listen to it. So thank you so much, and with that, we'll move on to our agenda. The next item is appointments and resignations. As we have none, we will move into a public hearing. Oh, I apologize. I skipped our consent agenda. Item 8 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of routine matters to be acted on with a single motion and vote. Council, at this time, does any member wish to remove an item for separate discussion? Councilor Bowles.
I do not. I was
okay.
ready to make the motion. I jumped the gun. Sorry.
That's fine. Seeing none at this time, I will take a motion to consider the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Oh.
I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
I would like to remove item 8B, please.
Item 8. Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem DeMont has requested that we remove item 8B. At this time, I will ask for a motion to consider the consent agenda minus item 8B. Councilor Bowles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we adopt consent agenda items 8A and 8C.
Thank you. Councilor Scully.
I second.
Okay. And this is a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMont,
Yes.
Mayor Seitz,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Scully,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
and Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
The consent agenda items 8A and 8C pass 6-0.
At this time, I will take a motion for item 8B. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Scroll back up to this one. I move to pass Councilors Bill number 24 on second reading, amending the adopted 2021 budgets of the general utility enterprise, water, wastewater, storm drainage, golf course enterprise, Legacy Ridge Golf Course and Walnut Creek Golf Preserve, parking management enterprise, fleet maintenance, sales and use tax, and parks, open space, and trails funds.
Councilor Smith.
Again.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on this item? Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate my concerns that I had last week, that I believe that there are FTEs on here that we don't need. However, there is a overwhelming majority of things that we do need. And although I am concerned about that growth and would prefer not being on there, I will support the motion.
Thank you for your comments and adding transparency to your vote. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mayor Seitz,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Scully,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Councilor Bowles,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Yes.
Consent item 8B passes 6-0.
All right, now the next item before us is a public hearing. The time is, so this is item 10A1 to hold a public hearing. The time is 7:40. We are going to open the public hearing. The first item will be a staff presentation. City Manager Tripp.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to introduce Amy Johnson, a planner with the Community Development Department. She'll be leading, I believe, this, and other members of the staff may participate. Amy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp, and good evening. I am Amy Johnson, Senior Planner for the City of Westminster. I will begin the presentation tonight. A number of staff members are also here, including Andrew Spurgeon, Principal Planner, Keith Klein, Transportation Engineer, Michael Wright, Principal Engineer, Nathan Ank, Senior Engineer, and Nicole Ankeny, Senior Landscape Architect. They'll be available to answer any questions or clarify items later in the hearing. I will present the staff analysis of the amendment to the preliminary development plan amendment for Applewood Point Senior Living at Walnut Grove and the request to change the use for the subject property. Approval of this PDP amendment would allow for an official development plan or ODP amendment to be reviewed for the construction of the development of an independent senior living or housing construction or building. Next slide, please. The staff agenda memo and its associated attachments have been properly posted on the city's website. Tonight's public hearing has been noticed as required. Public notices were mailed, posted on the subject property, and published in the Westminster window. These items are hereby entered into the public record at this time. Next slide. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of 108th Avenue and Wadsworth Parkway. Walnut Grove duplexes are to the west. A vacant portion of Ball Corporation campus is to the north. Vacant property and the Lao Buddhist Temple are to the east, and city open space is to the south. Next, please. Section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code contains 10 criteria that form the basis of consideration for the approval of PDP amendments. Staff finds that the PDP amendment generally meets these criteria. First, as background, the subject property is zoned PUD or Planned Unit Development. The comprehensive plan designates the property as residential R8. The PDP of record designates the property for retail commercial use, and the applicant is requesting a change to a senior residential land use, which would comply with the residential R8 comprehensive plan designation. The first three criteria relate to whether the PDP conforms with the applicable plans, codes, follows appropriate planning principles, and identifies any exceptions. Beyond compliance with the comprehensive plan, compliance with the architectural and site requirements listed in the senior housing design standards will be required for any official development plan or ODP submitted for the development on this property. The proposed circulation patterns, points of access, overall grading, and allowed uses are shown and regulated by the proposed PDP amendment before you all tonight. And while preliminary, generally meets these standards. If the applicant requests exceptions to the design standards or other code requirements on the ODP, those must be stated on a PDP amendment at that time. Next, please. Criteria 4 through 6 ensure that the project is compatible within the area, does not adversely affect current nor future development, nor residents in any way. Staff finds that the PDP amendment generally meets these criteria. The site abuts city open space and single-family attached uses and will serve as a good transitional use between them and the arterial streets. The senior housing design standards establish that attached and condominium-style senior residential facilities equal to or less than 18 dwelling units per acre should be reviewed under these standards, which does apply to the contemplated development before you of 8 dwelling units per acre. The development is improving the designated major drainage way through the property, providing a defined conveyance path from upstream runoff, as well as addressing on-site water quality and detention per the City of Westminster storm drainage design and technical criteria, as well as mile-high flood district criteria manuals. The development is improving 108th Avenue by providing a future second eastbound left turn lane, a westbound left turn lane into the site, and extending the bicycle lane in accordance with the city's ultimate cross-section for the roadway. The development will construct a sidewalk along the south side of 108th Avenue and the west side of Wadsworth Parkway along the property frontage. In addition, the development will provide pedestrian trails or sidewalks connecting the Walnut Creek Trail System and the RTD bus stop for all residents. Next, please. The final four criteria ensure that the PDP amendment improves and designs safe circulation patterns, access points, and identifies any land dedications that may be needed. Staff finds that the PDP amendment generally meets these criteria. The only vehicular access point to the site will be from 108th Avenue, minimizing impacts on Wadsworth Parkway. And as mentioned on the previous slide, the development is providing left turn and bike lanes in right-of-way on 108th Avenue, walks along the south side of 108th and the west side of Wadsworth Parkway, and connection to the Walnut Creek Trail System and the RTD bus stop for all residents. The PDP amendment also identifies the southeasternmost corner of the property for public land dedication. The applicant is proposing 85 units of senior housing, which means a projected population of 127.5 persons, making the dedication0 PLD requirement 1.53 acres. The city is requiring physical land dedication for 0.638 acres adjacent to the city open space, and the remainder will be paid with cash in lieu for 0.892 acres. The fair market value of the land will be determined with an ODP amendment for the purposes of the amount to be paid. Next, please. Staff concludes that this PDP amendment meets all of the approval criteria, including complying with the comprehensive plan designation of residential R8. Next, please. On June 8, 2021, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this application. Next, please. Staff believes that the proposed PDP amendment meets two goals of the city's strategic plan. It supports the goal to cultivate a thriving, inclusive, and engaged community, and it fosters and maintains a beautiful, desirable, safe, and environmentally responsible city. Next, please. As a result of staff's thorough analysis of the PDP amendment criteria set forth in section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code, staff recommends holding a public hearing to review the proposed PDP amendment and that the City Council approves the PDP amendment. The applicant does have a presentation, and there are several members of the applicant's team here tonight. I can answer any questions before that if you would like, and I believe some of them may need to be added as being available to speak.
Hi, Amy. Thank you very much. This is Eric Chuckle with United Properties. There is one gentleman I'd love to add if I could. His name is Kyle Hoffmeister. He's our civil engineer. And I believe Alex Hall was added so he could speak if necessary. He's also from United Properties.
Does the council have any questions for me before the applicant gives their presentation?
Thank you for asking, Amy. My apologies. Yes, are there any questions for Ms. Johnson at this time? Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for the presentation tonight. And I don't know if this is the right place to ask it because it may be an ODP question, but I was just curious, as always, want to know how the water fits into this development. Is it planned in the development? Is it part of it? Or are we going to be extending ourselves?
What I can say myself is that by complying with the comprehensive plan designation, it is accounted for with that planning that is associated with that comprehensive plan. I believe Sarah Borgers is with you in the council chambers tonight, and she may be able to offer a bit more authoritative answer to that question.
Thank you. Ms. Borgers?
Yes. So Amy actually, or excuse me, Ms. Johnson had it spot on. Because it is already included in the comprehensive plan, it is already included in the water supply plan. So there is no additional water beyond what we had already planned for this development.
Thank you. Councilor Scully, do you have further questions?
Well, I think I'm going to wait until after the presentation by the developer. Because I think he might answer the next question.
Perfect. Councilor Bowles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your presentation. I had just one question for you, and I may have some later as well for the developer. Can you tell me a little bit about the process for the public land dedication? How did that come about that you landed on that number of 0.6 whatever versus the 1.3 and then took the cash in lieu of? How did we get to that process?
I can speak a little bit to that, but I would rather Nicole Ankeny, Ms. Ankeny is with us virtually tonight. She can speak to it more thoroughly. And Nicole, Ms. Ankeny, if needed, I would be happy to show the site plan. It is attachment 2.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Ankeny, and I am a senior landscape architect. I am with the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department. So when these projects come in, we review them in the context of existing parks and open space, as well as future plans that have already been previously approved. In this case, the recommendation of the 0.638 essentially squares off the existing open space property. If you look at the site plan, there is a little bit of what we would informally call a dog leg. And so we are seeking to square off the property so that the boundary between the two is more clear, both to the general public and to city staff that do maintenance.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Is this in line with other developments? Is this typically kind of about the same ratio, or is it just on a case-by-case basis?
We evaluate everything on a case-by-case basis. I can tell you the adjacent open space, which is the Walnut Creek open space, has almost 43 acres on its own. If you look at the context of the Walnut Creek open space throughout that entire corridor, you're looking at almost 273 acres.
And that's a very good answer. Thank you, Ms. Ankeny. Appreciate your response. Thank you. Oh, I had one other quick question. Bulk Corporation is across the street, and they're a really good corporate member of our community. Did they have any type of input on this project? I know they have a lot of activity in their international headquarters across the street. Were they at any point involved, or not necessarily?
I can say that they were, and this is Ms. Johnson again, they were invited to the neighborhood meeting, the planning commission meeting, and this one as well. We have not heard anything specifically from them.
All right, thank you very much.
That answers all of your questions. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious about, as you've reviewed this proposal, calls of service, how they're determined with public safety. Specifically, I live in that area, and I know that Station 5 doesn't have its own ambulance. But how has public safety looked at this and how it might impact calls of service so that they can plan ahead with this addition if it passes?
That has not come up in the process of this review. Perhaps Andrew Spurgeon might have something to offer.
This is Andrew Spurgeon. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the question, Mayor Pro Tem DeMont. The fire department is one of the reviewing agencies when we do any application. And so I'll have to defer actually back to Amy in regard to what specific comments fire may have issued on this one.
Yes, they have. Fire has approved the plans at this time. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I believe you were speaking more about police, but yes, fire has absolutely reviewed it. Actually, police reviewed it too, and they had no comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, I would ask that we have the applicant's presentation.
Good evening. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm sorry to interrupt in there. My name is Eric Chuckle. I'm with United Properties. First off, I wanted to thank staff. They've been really wonderful to work with. And then, of course, I want to thank you, Mayor Seitz, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, and the rest of the city council members. United Properties is a company that's based in Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we have an office here at 1331 17th Street, Suite 604 in Denver, 80202. With me, as I mentioned earlier, is Alex Hall. He's our Senior Vice President, also with United Properties. Jeff Plank, our traffic engineer. Nathan Roseman, who's our architect. And Tom Klein, who's our landscape architect. I believe Kyle Hoffmeister, as well as our civil engineer, is with us. If there's any questions later on, happy to answer any questions that you might have. So United Properties, we've been officed here in Denver for 15 years. We're a developer, owner, and operator of retail, commercial, industrial, and senior living facilities. The platform we're here to talk about tonight is Applewood Point of Westminster. And this is a platform where we have 16 of these existing communities in Minnesota, which is where we originated. It's been very successful out there, so we decided to bring one of these Applewood Points here to Colorado. This will be our first one in Colorado and also the first one out of the state of Minnesota. So it's very exciting for us to bring this here. If we can go to the next slide, please. So here's our site plan. This is going to be, hopefully, a resident-owned active adult senior living community. The residents of an Applewood Point need to be 62 years of age at a minimum, but the average age of the other 16 communities is about 72 years old. This development will attract active seniors that enjoy the Colorado outdoors. It's wonderful that there's the close by Westview Rec Center, as well as the Walnut Creek Golf Preserve. We have wonderful views of the mountains and other great amenities in the area. There's a lot of shopping and grocery stores, restaurants, transportation, and many other amenities. We find that this is a perfect place for seniors to live and play. So this plan that you're looking at, we call it the Bent H. So the northeast corner there is Wadsworth and 108th Avenue. It's 85 units, as Amy had mentioned, 3 stories tall. The building sets back 80 feet from 108th Avenue, as well as from the right-of-way of Wadsworth Parkway. But you can kind of see that black line along Wadsworth. The right-of-way is pretty far away from the edge of road. So we're a pretty good distance away from Wadsworth Parkway. We will have just a single full movement access off 108th Avenue. Again, it's only 85 homes. We call them homes as opposed to units, because that's really what it is. It's 85 homes for these seniors, and so the traffic generation is, fairly minimal in comparison to other types of housing. Limitations are definitely during that peak hour, morning and evening, because of the type of resident who lives here. The building is oriented to the north and east. You can see the turnaround there at the front entry. There's a porte-cochere so that for drop-offs to protect the residents from the weather. On the opposite side of the entry is a large patio, a balcony, activity areas, outdoor grill, fire pit with great views of the mountains. Then on the east side of the building, you can kind of see a black road there stubbing in. That's our underground garage. So there will be enough parking stalls for all 85 residents. We're estimating about 93 stalls right now, so 1 vehicle per home. That'll be in that conditioned underground garage. Along the western limits of the property is the North Fork of Walnut Creek. So Walnut Creek is south of us. And that's a drainage way that we will be improving. Currently, it's tough to see when you're out there, but we will be improving that to allow for the drainage that will be generated by that ball property to the north when it does develop. One of the beauties of that drainage way being along the western property is it gives us a good buffer between between us and the townhomes or the duplexes to the west of us. It's about 170 feet from the property line to the most western corner of our building. Up along 108th Avenue, we're going to be dedicating a 17 feet of right-of-way, which is about 1/3 of an acre. Also, we're going to be providing for a new bus stop at the corner there of Wadsworth and 108th Avenue. Currently, it's just a pad with a bench, so we're going to be building a new bus stop there that we expect a lot of our seniors will be utilizing to get down to the King Supers to the south or up to the other retail to the north. We're also going to be paying the Northwest Water Main Extension recovery fees, both for Wadsworth and 108th Avenue, as well as using the reclaimed water system for all of our irrigation that the city built in 108th Avenue. So that goes towards the some of the water items that were discussed earlier. Another thing that we're really proud of that you can see on this plan is all the white lines and curves. Those are all proposed sidewalks and trails that we're going to be running throughout this development. We're firm believers in activity for our seniors. So we're providing on site about 3/4 of a mile of walking trail. Then also off site with the adjacent sidewalks, as well as some crusher fine trail along the Walnut Creek, we're providing another 1,100 feet or so of trail. So about a mile of trail we'll be constructing with this development. So it's again, just a wonderful location for our seniors to be living. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you, wonderful. So these are some pictures of one of our Applewoods in Minnesota. Again, it's 85 units we're proposing to do. Of those 85 homes, it's about 127,000 square feet. The homes range in size from 1,200 to 1,900 square feet. They all have 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, full kitchen, laundry room, a balcony or a patio, depending on what floor you're on. Most homes also include a study or a sunroom. So it's everything you would need in the typical home. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a confusing plan, but again, this is the footprint of the building. And the point of this is the colored areas are the units, so that shows some variation in the type of units we have. But the gray area are the common areas inside of the building. So what makes this building different from a typical apartment building, that's age restricted, is that we have a lot of interior common areas on the first floor and the second floor, as well as the underground garage. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So these are some pictures of those common areas. So there's a large foyer and lobby, a great room, a game room, library, a fitness room, conference room, an arts and crafts studio, and there's a separate locked storage for every home. In addition to that, down in the garage, there'll be additional storage, a spray car wash, a vacuum area, a hobby shop, which is that bottom left corner there. So it's really that kind of that man cave, a tool area. There's a pet wash area, garden supply storage, a bike maintenance shop, electric car charging stations. We'll have both in the garage as well as up on the surface. And then other amenities will be in the garage. That's where we'll gather all the trash. There'll be chutes on all the floors, so all the trash and recycling can go down and go right into the garbage bins. And then trash will be picked up once a week, just like at your home. So these homes will be owned by the seniors who live here. This is not a rental community. They're invested for long term, so they're very interested in the look, the feel, and the maintenance of the facility. What we're finding is that there's very many Westminster residents who are interested in this facility. We've started marketing this facility, and we're finding that there's a lot of Westminster residents that are interested in it. And the key here is that it's very low maintenance for those seniors. So the only thing that they have to maintain is their own unit. So they need to really just vacuum and clean the bathrooms and the kitchen. Everything else is maintained by, there's 3 staff members. There's a maintenance person that maintains the grounds as well as the building itself. And then there's a cleaning person who just cleans the common areas. They don't clean the homes. And then there's a house management individual that's also an activity manager and a resident liaison. So one of the beauties too with maintenance is if you even need your light bulb changed inside your home, you put in a work order to the maintenance individual and he'll come on up and change your light bulb for you. So people don't need to get up on a ladder or do anything. So it's a really safe place. We don't provide services to the residents, care services, but yet they have everything they need to be in a safe community. The next slide, please. So this is just page 4 from the PDP, and this shows that that public land dedication at the southeast corner. As the ladies were mentioning, it squares off the property by dedicating that little dog leg down there. And also I wanted to point out that staff has asked us to add a trail connection to the Village of Walnut Grove, which is our neighbor to the west. So we show that there with a dashed line that'll connect that property down to the Walnut Creek Trail. So that'll be their second point of connection. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the front of the building. So this, you can see the mountains in the back, but we're looking kind of northwest here. The intersection is to the right. So this shows that entryway and the portico share. And the next slide, please. And then this is the back of the building. This is what I mentioned earlier. Something we're really proud of, real excited about. It really shows that Colorado architecture. Here's our balconies, the active areas with the fire pit and the full outdoor kitchen we plan on doing there. These nice umbrellas. It shows the type of architecture that we hope to be building here. So with that completes my presentation. I do want to thank you as well as let you know that we already have 63 reservation holders for these 85 units, and obviously all seniors, and you're real excited about this. I would have loved to invite them all this evening to speak, but it would have taken way too much of your time. So thank you again, and my whole team is here if you have any questions.
Thank you. I will ask my colleagues, do you have any questions, comments for Mr. Shekel? Councilor Vols.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just have one quick question. Thank you for your presentation. My question is, you referenced that the traffic flow, the traffic in and out, and the amount of traffic in this area is negligible or very minor. Can someone please speak to the details? When, I don't know if Mr. Klein is involved in this, or how do we determine that, and what does it look like?
I'm going to ask, would the applicant or would staff like to answer that question?
I will jump in here because I believe, if I remember correctly, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, that Kyle Hoffmeister is your traffic engineer. Is that correct?
Actually, Kyle's my civil engineer, but I do have my traffic engineer. That's okay. Jeff Plank is our traffic engineer. I'm happy to, I believe he is on, and he could speak.
Okay, yes, that would be great. And we also do have Heath Klein, our city transportation engineer, if needed.
Thank you.
Jeff Plank, there he is.
Hi, good evening, council members. Jeff Plank with Kinley Horn, helped prepare the traffic impact study. My address is 4582 South Ulster Street in Denver, Colorado. Yeah, so the trip generation, this is a very low trip generator. During the AM peak hour, 17 trips anticipated. This is based on the ITE trip generation manual, which is a governing manual for traffic impact studies. And then in the PM peak, 22 trips during the peak hour. So to put that in a reference, that's one trip every 3 minutes. And to keep that in mind, a trip in and a trip out is considered 2 trips. So it's one trip leaving at 3 minutes and then one trip coming back in 3 minutes.
Thank you.
One other point that I can add to that, with the 22 trips, a lot of times for a lot of jurisdictions, we don't even do a traffic impact study if it's less than 50 trips in the peak hour. And we're less than half of that.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thanks for that answer. I appreciate your answer.
Any additional comments, Mr. Klein? Seeing none, the next question.
Good evening, Council, and thank you, Mayor. No, I support what Mr. Plank said, that this is indeed quite small for traffic generation. So the Transportation Department did not see an issue with the additional trips generated by this development.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Klein.
Councilor Scully?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my questions revolve around two things, amenities and noise. So let's start with amenities. It seems like this development has a lot of amenities to offer. Community rooms and places for people to interact and to do tasks. Will there be any service amenities like maybe a van that would take residents to and from maybe the grocery store or to visits? I'm just kind of concerned because there really isn't a grocery store within a mile of that location. There is one at a mile, but not like they can't walk there. They're going to have to drive. So I was just curious if there's any plans for a van or anything of that nature.
Hello, thank you. Eric Checkle again. This is a community that does not provide services. So at this time, we have not planned for a van. That's something we talk about at all communities, such as this such as this type. We do provide communities with services that always have vans. I believe we have in other Applewoods where the community has purchased a vehicle where they can share in the use of that. So it's definitely something that we can talk about and see if the community is interested in it. That's one beauty of getting reservations early on with these seniors, is that we send out questionnaires and we take polls and send out ways for them to input on what they'd like to see at the community. If that's something they're interested in and it's something that we can put into the budget, then it's definitely something that we would entertain.
Okay. And you mentioned several times that these are purchasable units. I'm sorry if I missed it, but I didn't hear a cost per unit.
Yeah, so the cost it ranges obviously because the unit sizes vary. So the cost of the unit, the smallest unit is $490,000 up to $770,000. So again, the square footage is 1,200 to 1,900. And not only do you just get the home, but you get all that 20,000+ square feet of amenity area. So that's how we've priced it at this point.
Is there any affordable housing considered in there?
There is not an affordable component to this development. But I will say, if I may, that this type of development, the appreciation will get locked in at 3%, is what we're proposing at this time, 3% per year, as opposed to, as you've probably seen in the Colorado market, that we've seen years where it's been in double digits. And so in this type of community, we lock in that appreciation at 3% per year so that when a unit does become available or a home becomes available, that the price is not out of the reach of another senior that may want to move in here. What we find at all the Applewoods is that a wait list is created. So once the facility is full, then a wait list gets created by that property manager I mentioned earlier, and then they keep track of that wait list so that when a home becomes available, they call number one on the wait list and say, okay, we name all of our units after a type of apple. So we have a Crispin available. It's this many square feet, and here's the price based on that appreciation value. Are you interested in it? And if that person turns it down, then it goes to the next person on the list. So that's part of the beauty of this. I wouldn't, it's not affordable, and we don't call it affordable. We like to call it attainable, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm familiar with the two terms and their differences. So thank you for clarifying that. And then my final questions revolve around noise. So the airport is just over the hill, and those Wadsworth Parkway is actually a very traveled throughway that leads to Highway 36. That's a lot of noise. And I hear from residents all the time about the noise on Sheridan. I hear about the noise in the skies. So I'm just wondering, what is your plan to be proactive in mitigating that noise for your residents?
Another good question. We've talked a lot about that. I mentioned with Wadsworth, the distance that we are from Wadsworth isn't just the setback, but there's also that additional width. So we're pretty far away from Wadsworth, which does, contribute to the noise level. So what we are doing is we are putting in a higher STC rated window, specifically along Wadsworth, and then also along the northern perimeter of the building along 108th. And then also looking at the traffic patterns for the airport that's nearby. We'll make sure we provide those same higher rated windows for the airplanes that'll be flying along that north and west side of the building. So we feel like we're taking that into consideration, and we are accommodating that concern.
I appreciate the setback from Wadsworth Parkway and from 108th. Many people know that I live at the corner of 118th and Sheridan. So I experience noise quite a bit in my home from those two highways. And one of the things that really helped was a wall between my home and the two highways. Is that something you would consider? I always hate to mention a wall, but is it something you would consider? Because I do think it would help with a sound barrier.
Well, we really haven't thought about that, to be honest with you. We were really focused on making sure that the building had its own soundproof capabilities with the distances that we are set back. There is a lot of landscaping that we need to do as well to meet the city's requirements. And and this plan shows really just a snippet of that. It's a small percentage of actually what we're going to be providing. I'd like to think that we could provide some living landscape or a living wall, air quotes, if I may say, to provide for that separation and that buffer of the noise. It's definitely something we can talk about and look into, but I'd really like to more focus on the soft buffering, if that'd be okay.
May I add a comment there?
Yes, please, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that we did route this project for review by RMMA and received comments back from them. And they had a couple of requirements, which the applicant has agreed to do, as well as a couple of recommendations, which city staff has decided that we think should be required. And these will be more fully addressed at the ODP stage, the official development plan. However, they are, number one, using building materials rated at 25 decibels or higher, and a disclosure to all residents about the proximity to the airport. That disclosure is stated in brief on the PDP document itself, and it will be further fleshed out in conjunction, with cooperation from RMMA at the point of the ODP.
It does help me and makes me feel a little better. So thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Jekyll.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Scully. Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions here. We went over the average cost per unit. Is there a HOA or community fee on top of that?
There is there is a cost for the maintenance individual, the cleaning person, and the property manager. So there's cost for that. And also what we do is all of the utilities are rolled up into a monthly cost for all the residents. So everything except for your electric bill is rolled up into a monthly cost. So there's some value out of the volume there, and then it's spread out over the units. So there is a cost on top of that, on cost of the purchase of the home. And one thing that I neglected to mention was that the cost of the homes, it's not set on a typical 30-year mortgage. It's a single master mortgage. It's actually a 40-year mortgage. So the payment is spread out over more years. It's a lower payment than what you might see on a $490,000 mortgage, which is advantageous to the seniors as well. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. A couple questions on traffic. For the AM and PM trips, when was that data captured?
That traffic study was, what, Jeff, was that was pre-COVID, because we started the process pre-COVID, if that is your question.
Yes, thank you.
And traffic generation it's determined by the building itself, and the units and the type of resident living within it. It's not based on the surrounding traffic.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, I second that. The IT trip generation manual is the 10th edition that came out in 2017 and has substantial data points for similar uses. So it's not as Eric was saying, a method of comparing to COVID or whatnot. It's a manual with data points prior to COVID.
Great, thank you so much. The other two questions relate to the 108th in and out. How does that work as far as that one access point off of 108th and it was asked by a constituent, I didn't see an answer. It probably was answered, it just wasn't in our packet. But how is that traffic moving in and out of those lanes for on 108th?
So it's a full movement. So we will be adding a left turn pocket, so a westbound left turn pocket so people can get in. And then also entering in, you can turn right into the facility. And then it's a full movement out. So the right turn out and then a left turn out as well. So
okay, thank you. And then off of Wadsworth, I'm curious why there wasn't any right in, right out access point for a second point of entering or exiting off of Wadsworth.
And that's a very good question too, because we started off with a right in, right out and off and on to Wadsworth. And we submitted what they called a curb cut request to CDOT, and CDOT is the jurisdiction for Wadsworth. And they said, due to the limited amount of traffic that you have in the peak hour that we talked about earlier, that a curb cut onto Wadsworth is not warranted. So they steered us away from that to just the single access off 108.
Now, I know this is kind of futuristic. If you can't answer it, then that's fine. But is there any kind of option if it does generate more traffic within 108th and or Wadsworth to have that right in, right out option, or to go back and look at and say we need an access point?
I'm going to defer that one to Heath. I'm not sure how that would work. Mr. Klein, I'm sorry.
So Councilor Smith, Heath Klein, City Transportation Engineer. So we did actually have conversations with CDOT even regarding a emergency access, and they discouraged that as well, with the understanding that if it was determined that this development were to require one in the future, they would work with us, but it would require gates on it, similar to what we were starting to see along Federal on properties that require a second point of access. But we worked this through the fire department, and due to the number of units, it only requires one access point. So that is what we're moving forward with currently.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I'd like to open it up to the public comment portion of the public hearing. Are there any members? I'd ask the city clerk, are there any? Actually, need to go back to read. City Clerk Parker. I'll read this real quick. There are 4 methods available for participation in the public hearing. You may testify in person, submit written email testimony, record a voicemail to be played back during the meeting, or request to speak live via the remote meeting link through the city's clerk office. I'd ask the city clerk to please summarize the number of participants this evening and introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This evening, we have 1 person who has signed up to speak in person. No one requested to speak live via the meeting link. We also have 1 voicemail, which we will play back after our live speaker, and there were no additional emails submitted after the packet was published and sent to council. Our first speaker for the public hearing this evening is Mr. John Palmer.
Good evening. A couple of random thoughts while listening to this presentation. First, water meters, will there be 1 meter per unit, or is this 1 meter for the whole development? I know they talked about the noise from the airport. I think that's a great concern. The shopping, the great distance to shopping for seniors and medical should be addressed. The sidewalk on Wadsworth, that's a sidewalk to nowhere. What justice is that to the seniors? How can they get from 108th down to King Soopers if they choose to go that route, short of going over the hill and through the woods on the bike path? Not safe for seniors. Secondly, they just stated they would be using reclaimed water. Most recently, Max Kirschbaum stated that the city was currently at capacity for reclaimed water. So how will we be rationing that to this development when we're already at capacity? The police, I'm understanding that they're a little short-staffed now. That concerns me. Most importantly, the fire access to this property. How are the large fire trucks to get in and out and maneuver? I don't see any place that there's a turnaround for them. Got a question on what is the building height? What is the overall building height of this unit? Is the developer going to be using green building materials, formaldehyde free and such? These are seniors we're talking about. I haven't heard an actual traffic count for daily or hourly on 108th Avenue. All I've heard is numbers from 2 years ago, which I don't believe currently reflect what's going on at Ball and the golf course. Has there been an environmental study done on the properties there or the surrounding properties for the vegetation and wildlife? Parking counts, that concerns me. Where are the guests and visitors supposed to park? Sounds like there's limited parking. How much of it will be handicapped or ADA accessible? Another question is, will there be provision for people that have the electric vehicles? Will those be provided in this town, in this development? Back to the reclaimed water. If this is available to them, who's going to be paying for that upgrade to get it to them? Will that be shouldered by the citizens or will that be shouldered by the developer? I think those are my concerns. I hope that you'll, oh, excuse me, one more. Security. Will there be any type of security at this facility? Seniors going in or out, key passes, cameras. Big concern for seniors in this day and age with everything that's going on. Didn't hear a word about that. I think that pretty much addressed most of the points that I caught notes on. So I hope you'll take all those points into consideration when considering this development tonight and in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
If I may, I'd like to start off by addressing several of those, and I'll ask Mr. Checkle to chime in a moment. The city does require submetering for all units for water. I'm going to skip one of these for another staff member to speak about in a moment. At the point of the official development plan amendment being submitted, we will be reviewing the fire turning radii, the building height, although I believe we have an approximate height right now, and we will be reviewing building materials at that time as well. I'll let Mr. Checkle answer about building height in just a moment. I do not believe that, I do believe that we will be looking at, well, preliminarily city staff has looked at an environmental study since there is land dedication involved here, but I believe they will be looking at that in greater detail at the point of the official development plan. And we will be looking at parking counts at the point of the official development plan as well. So I would like to ask Ms. Nicole Ankeny to speak about the sidewalk connection along Wadsworth first, and then we'll have Mr. Checkle answer some of the other ones. Oh, excuse me, one more thing I can add is that the applicant will be paying for the reclaimed water. Ms. Ankeny, please go ahead.
Yes, again, this is Nicole Ankeny, Senior Landscape Architect with Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. Mr. Palmer brings up a very good point about the sidewalk along Wadsworth Parkway. Currently, the property to the south is owned by the city as public open space, and it does not currently have a sidewalk adjacent. Staff is looking into this, although we do have some complexity in crossing the creek. The bridge that is owned and maintained by CDOT does not currently allow for a sidewalk connection. So staff is aware that having Mr. Checkle put in a sidewalk does create a gap in our system along public open space. So public open space, our folks will be looking along with the transportation team at ways that we can remedy this. One of the options may be to provide a sidewalk sometime in the future when we have available funding as far south on Wadsworth Parkway as possible, and then potentially loop it through the park or through the open space so that we can meet ADA requirements. If we do have an opportunity to work with CDOT, if they ever do a bridge replacement, we will also look at opportunities there. Though that might be a little bit challenging given that with a sidewalk on Wadsworth, you do want to provide some distance if you can in that right-of-way profile. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nicole Ankeny. And Mr. Checkle, if you could please answer building height, as well as speaking to security and electric vehicles, as you mentioned before. And then we'll go back to traffic numbers with Mr. Jeff Plank.
Happy to. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So the building height, the PDP calls out a height of 55 feet, still 3 stories, but 55 feet. That allows for some mansards. As you saw in some of the rendering that we show, it shows that peak roof. That allows for the height of that peaked roof. Electric vehicles, obviously something that's in the forefront of everybody's mind these days. We are providing electric vehicle charging stations in the garage, as well as on the surface of the surface parking. I believe the gentleman, Mr. Palmer, also mentioned guest parking. We do provide guest parking on the surface of the facility. It's typically provided at 70% of the home. So we're looking at about 60 to 63 surface parking stalls. Again, this would be we have 16 of these facilities already, and there's actually 3 other ones that are currently under development. So we have a long-standing history of what type of parking these facilities need, and we've determined that 70% ratio for visitors is appropriate. As far as safety goes, all the residents will have a key fob that allows them to not only get into the building, but also into the garage. And then we put cameras also at the entries to make sure that it's a safe facility. Was there another one you wanted me to answer, Ms. Johnson? Or was that it?
I think that's it for you. And then if Mr. Plank can speak to some of the traffic numbers that Mr. Palmer was asking about.
Yeah, so previously I just mentioned peak hour trips. So the daily trips are along Wadsworth are anticipated to be less than 150, which is less than 0.5% of what is currently on Wadsworth Parkway. So it all alludes back to it being a very low trip generator, both during the peak hour and daily.
Thank you for that response. City Clerk Parker, is there another recorded call?
Yes, if you are ready for that voicemail, I'll ask that IT staff cue that up and please play the one voicemail for public comment. And again, just to remind you, there is a slight delay while we wait for that recording to load.
Yes, this is Joanne Mercer, 9236 West 107th Muse in Westminster 80021. And I'm calling in reference to the 7th amended preliminary development plan at Walnut Grove. I hate to see every square inch in Westminster have construction on it. First of all, we have already 2 large senior complexes under construction, the northeast corner of Wadsworth and 90th and the southeast corner of Old Wadsworth and Church Ranch. And I'm concerned about the amount of traffic that will be increased and the lack of just relaxing open space. Thank you.
So may I go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Please feel free.
Thank you. As we had mentioned before, just to respond to that, there is no land that has been designated as open space that will be developed. In fact, we're taking a little bit of this land and dedicating it to open space. Just to clarify that point, I think we've already spoken quite a bit about traffic. So I believe that addresses that comment.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I now want to open up to my colleagues to see if they have any questions generated by the public comment that they heard tonight. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to get some clarification and follow up on some of Mr. Palmer's questions. I don't believe that we heard, he had made a comment about us being at capacity with the reclaimed water. Can Mr. Kirschbaum speak to that? Or somebody from his department?
Ms. Sarah Borgers, I believe, is in council chambers there.
Ms. Borgers, please feel free to come forward.
Yes, Sarah Borgers, Water Resources and Quality Manager in Public Works. So what I can say is there is a reclaim infrastructure that's right there. A number of the industries that work up there are currently on reclaimed water. In terms of this particular parcel using reclaimed water, I'm afraid I personally haven't been involved in those conversations, so I may have to get back with council and get you more information on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, just to know whether or not we have the capacity.
Absolutely. That's definitely been something we've been discussing. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. My other question around
Mayor Pro Tem, yeah, let's let Mr. Spurgeon. It sounds like he may have an additional comment to your first question.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, for letting me interject. I just wanted to remind council, as this project is over 10 acres, you will see it again at the time of official development plan, and at which time some of these details will be better known. So I know sometimes the council sees project at a PDP stage, and then at the ODP stage, it's an administrative approval and you don't see it again. This is one of those times where it will be back in front of you with that greater level of detail.
Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Spurgeon. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont, please continue.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Spurgeon and Ms. Borges. So my other question is more, and this is just trying to be forward thinking about, I mean, I obviously know this area very well. That's in my backyard practically. So with the sidewalk, I'm just curious. I know recently we have had some work done on the open space where you have both the paved and the dirt paths. I'm just curious, is there a potential path to go through the open space and then divert back to Wadsworth in a way that would allow that extension with a paved path for people to get up to the King Soopers up there? It's not that far if there was a paved path. So I'm just curious if there's another alternative route that potentially goes through our open space, or if maybe, if you can't answer that now, maybe that's something you take to the next phase and you can plan for it.
Good question, Mayor Pro Tem. It looks like Ms. Ankeny is on to answer it.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, again, this is Nicole Ankeny, Senior Landscape Architect. You are correct, Councilor DeMont, Mayor Pro Tem DeMont. That is one of the options that we have been discussing. We don't have an exact alignment planned out, but at this current time, looking at a very high level, just with the constraints with the creek and the bridge that belongs to CDOT, we do believe that wrapping the sidewalk down into the open space will provide the best connectivity. I will mention that as part of this development, regardless of the sidewalk adjacent to public open space at Wadsworth Parkway, this development will be required to tie into the existing Walnut Creek Trail system. So though it is not completely paved throughout, there will be some opportunities for residents to cross through. It is difficult and very steep at the very southeastern point of the city open space, and that corner is one of our most difficult areas that we were going to have to design around. We do not currently have a specific design or alignment nor costs to provide at this time, but it is on the radar of staff as a very important connection that is needed.
Great, thank you. The last question that I have, just trying to visualize that parcel in my head. When we talk about building height, and I think either staff or the applicant could probably answer this. That parcel actually kind of goes down from, say, 108, where it kind of sits down lower. So I would assume that that building is going to appear a little bit lower than if it was at street level with 108th or Wadsworth.
Amy Johnson here. I believe that is correct. However, we have not reviewed any of these building elevations or even really the footprint at the point of the PDP. These graphics are really just provided for future information of a concept.
Okay, great. Those are all my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions from my colleagues, but I do have a few very quickly. In regards to Mayor Pro Tem's last comment, it did just, I guess, beg the question, will all of the entities that have weighed in on the applicant's proposal for the PDP again weigh in at the ODP level when this is a little bit more fine-grained? So specifically our MMA, our fire department, they will have a second look at this. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, and probably it will be more people.
Okay, thank you. And then because this has been an issue that I think has been really talked about in our community with some concern, I was hoping we could talk about the public land dedication so people understand how, I know we talked about the dog leg going in there, but that we haven't in this instance waived the public land dedication, but rather determined what's appropriate for the site. If someone from staff could kind of walk through the process, my guess is that's Ms. Ankeny, but I could be wrong.
I think that is correct. Ms. Ankeny would be the perfect person.
Yes, thank you. Again, this is Nicole Ankeny, Senior Landscape Architect. There is a specific calculation in the city code that determines the amount of land required. It's based upon the type of the project, and it is also based upon the unit count or home count. In this case, with the 85 homes, they're going to be required to provide 1.53 acres. As we look at our entire open space through the Walnut Creek corridor and the trail connections needed, the trail connections that exist, along with park space, staff concluded that squaring out the property was in the best interest of the city. We have a substantial amount of city open space in this case that is south of this property. So we believe that taking 0.892 acres, the equivalent of cash in lieu, is in the best interest of the city at this time. As I mentioned earlier in the council meeting, the entire Walnut Creek open space has 273 acres. The existing adjacent open space is almost 43 acres. And I'm happy to elaborate if that does not answer your full question.
I guess the area that I wanted to focus on is the fact that our code does contemplate the cash in lieu in circumstances like this. And then I would like to kind of have a conversation about how is that calculated, what that cash in lieu amount will be, and then what it'll be used for.
Yes, I think those are excellent questions. So at this point in time, we do not have an exact cash amount. That will be determined at the official development plan review. And essentially what will take place is that we will, the developer applicant will provide information on the valuation of the land. City staff will check that valuation and ensure that it is accurate for the general area on the property value. And then that property value will be the determining factor of how much the final cash in lieu amount is. So it's based upon the land value. It's fair market value. So we'll look at either sales agreements. We'll look at appraisals and that sort of information. It's got to be certified documentation that we accept and thoroughly review before we approve that what the actual cost of that is.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the final portion of that was, first off, just, and maybe this is more for City Attorney Frankel, but just kind of that, check in that this is what our code contemplates, that we can do cash in lieu when appropriate, that this is not deviating from that requirement.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. And yes, in fact, the Westminster Code does contemplate that fee in lieu can be paid if actual land is not provided, and that be based upon the fair market value of the land.
Thank you. And then for those listening that might be curious, what do we do with that cash in lieu?
We collect those funds, and that is tracked through the city manager's office, through the budget and policy office, with some assistance from Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. And we track those funds as they come in so that they can be properly allocated into the budget, most specifically for parks and open space.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Are there any other questions from my colleagues in regards to thoughts that came up from hearing the public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment portion of the public hearing. And I will ask staff, or I will ask the applicant if they have any final comments.
Eric, you might be muted.
Are there final comments from the applicant?
I'm so sorry. No, ma'am. There is no further comments or questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any final comments from staff?
No,
I
thank
don't
you,
believe
Mayor.
so, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp.
Yeah, Heath Klein, City Transportation Engineer. There was a question about the turning movements into the site from 108th Avenue that I'm not sure was made clear. Currently, west of this property, 108th Avenue is a 5-lane facility, which means 2 westbound, 2 eastbound, and it has a center left turn lane, but that gets that cross section is changed as you approach the intersection of Wadsworth Parkway. So this development will provide a left turn lane in where the current left turn lane is for a left into the site. But while they do that, we are going to be able to take up some of the existing room at the near the intersection of Wads Parkway and provide dual left turns onto northbound Wadsworth Parkway because they are adding an additional separate right turn lane. So currently the 2 eastbound lanes, the second eastbound lane, and thank you for putting the graphic up below, but the second eastbound turn or lane turns into the right turn lane. So in order to match what our future designation of the roadway is, this development would add a second or a separate right turn lane to allow us to have that second eastbound lane. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know that there was some public that had question on whether or not people were going to be turning left from a through lane, the westbound into the site. And that's not going to be the case. There will be a dedicated left turn lane to get into the site. And that way, if people are turning to go from the site and go west to the golf course or somewhere, out to Sims or the dog park, they will be able to get into that existing left turn lane and kind of almost have an acceleration lane. So at no point will be people or vehicles turning from through lanes. They will be turning from actual turn lanes. So thank you. Apologize for butting in.
No, thank you, Mr. Klein, for making sure that question from the residents were fully answered. Mr. Tripp or Ms. Johnson, any final statements? Okay. Seeing none, go ahead.
I said no, thank you, Madam Mayor.
A little challenging doing a public hearing partially remote, so please
Yes.
apologies for the awkwardness from time to time. Seeing no other comments from my colleagues, I am going to close the public hearing at 8:53. I now will ask my colleagues for a motion. Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the preliminary development plan amendment for Applewood Point Senior Living at Walnut Grove.
Councilor Voles.
I second the motion.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that this is a good use of that parcel. We sorely need a diversity of different senior housing at different income levels for different folks that would like to age within the city. It's something that I've consistently heard over the 8 years that I've been involved in local matters. So I'm glad to see that this comes forward and glad to approve it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, too. I'll be voting in favor of this. I also like a differential and mix, but also, too, I believe that the market drives property. And if we have 62 pre-sales for this, the market is telling us that this is viable for that area also.
Thank you, Councilor Seymour. Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Much to like my colleagues, this seems to be a very good development, and Councilor Seymour took the words right out of my mouth. I've noted 63, so I don't know if it's 62 or 63, but to have that kind of interest is foretelling. So I will be voting in favor of it.
And Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also will be voting in favor of this development. I had a lot of concerns reading through the packet, and I feel that all of those concerns were addressed tonight by our city staff and by our representative from the development. So thank you for all your time and understanding of my questions. This is a good piece. This is a good development for this piece of land. I'm proud to approve it. Thank you.
Councilor Bowles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also am voting in favor of this evening. I think it's a good development. I applaud staff for working with the developer and the developer working with our staff to find ways to connect this particular development and the people who will be living there with their open spaces, the trails in the area. So thank you for that. And then I like the answers on the traffic. That comes up a lot with these developments, and the extra turn lanes being added, I think, are important. So thank you very much. I will be voting yes.
I, the mayor, will also be voting yes because I find that it meets all 10 criteria that we set forth as our requirements. Particularly just the first criteria that this is the proposed land use is its PDP are in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, all codes, ordinances, and policies. And by policies, I think that really does tie into our strategic plan goals and of being in a vibrant, inclusive community. We need to have a housing typology that meets all demographics in our community. And as my colleague, Councilor Seymour mentioned, clearly there's some latent need for senior for sale housing in our community. So I will be voting yes as well. With that, I ask the clerk to lead us in a roll call vote.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
And Mayor Sites.
Yes.
Item 10A2, to approve the PDP amendment for Applewood Point Senior Living passes 6-0.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item before us is item 10B. Can I get a motion on item 10B? Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move, based on the recommendations of the city manager, to determine that the public interest is best served by authorizing an amendment to the engineering service agreement contract with CDM Smith, Inc. to provide final engineering design services for the Water 2025 water treatment facility in the amount of $11,378,496 and a contingency of $1,137,850 for a total of $12,516,346. The amendment increases the total authorized expenditure with this contractor from $3,043,510 to $15,559,856.
Councilor Bowles.
I second the motion.
There has been a motion and a second on item 10B. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns? Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to address the reason for my no vote on this tonight. I have recently brought up that I feel like I'm not sure that we're on the right trajectory or plan, and whether or not this plant is currently needed. And as much as I do believe we need to make sure that safe drinking water in our utility is a priority, I cannot support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem. Would it be helpful to have staff go over the staff report that was presented to us that detailed the cost escalation if we were to defer, or the series of votes that led us to here tonight?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Do any? I'm going to ask, and I see him, I apologize, you can't get in the queue, and it's hard for me to see the screen from here, but City Manager Tripp, I see you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. I'll be brief. You have an extensive report in front of you, and I won't go through all that, but I think for the benefit of maybe highlighting this for you and also providing information to the public, I will refer to some what I think to be significant matters. This is the third contract with the firm that was initially contracted with in 2019. This comes as a consequence of the city's 2015 water treatment facilities master plan that was done after an extensive analysis identified that the most cost-effective alternative for the city's water future was to construct a replacement water treatment plant at a new site and eventually retire Semper, at that time 52 years of age. When Semper's retired in 2040, it will be 71 years of age. While Semper is still providing a reliable and high quality water, Semper is aging and requires an annual investment of $4 million for significant repairs and replacement of existing equipment. So there is a need for this replacement. Delaying this contract will cost the city more money to maintain Semper without gaining any improvements in treatment. As I mentioned, the first of these contracts was 2019. I do realize that we're coming to you with still some questions that you have concerning how this will be paid for and what the timing of it is. But I hope you'll agree that previous work does indicate that there's a need for this facility. Although we are still discussing the timing and how to fund, I would recommend that we approve this to move forward and to not lose through inflation the value of our money that we have available in the approved budget to continue to stay on course to replace Semper. We've gone through a very extensive community assessment of the location of this facility. We've agreed on a location. We're in the process of acquiring the land, and we can do this work and still come down to a conversation that allows us to figure out the best way to pay for it and the best schedule to complete it. To have this work done or in process will inform all that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. Are there any other members of council that would like to speak? Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be supporting this tonight. I'm looking ahead to 2040, and I think we can amortize our costs. I, of course, have been critical of some of our current costs, but I think we can amortize this over that period of time and make it useful. I've been on, as many of my colleagues have been on, several tours of the Semper water plant. And if you want to speak of aging in place, you can go there and look what's still inside the walls there as it's moved forward. So we have an opportunity to spread this cost out over a significant amount of time, and it will not be fully online until 2040. So I'll be supporting this, and I look forward to creative financing and a way to spread that cost so it doesn't significantly impact our day-to-day rates for our residents any more than they are.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Or I'm sorry, Councilor Seymour. Councilor Voles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also will be voting for this tonight. I have a couple questions, but this is already budgeted for. This isn't new money. This is something we already have in the budget that's already been taken care of. Is that correct?
When it comes to such an extensive investment as this is, I'd like to bring on our CFO, Larry Dorr, and whatever support he needs from Public Works Director, Max Kirschbaum, please.
DCM Dorr.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience as I got that powered up there. Larry Dorr, Chief Financial Officer and Deputy City Manager. To answer the question, yes, these funds are budgeted and been as it's an amendment to this plan. Of course, Mr. Kirschbaum is available also to answer any questions. We'll let you know that, yes, this is presently in the city's 2021 budget as approved and planned for last year as multiple steps in this project.
Okay, thank you. And then I also had questions. If we delay, so there's a $4 million cost annually in repairs at Semper is what I think I'm reading here. And then also there's an inflationary cost. We go each year that we don't do it. It's another, 6.4. So a total, so an annual delay in this annually is a cost to taxpayers of 10.4 million if by not moving forward with this. Am I reading that correctly?
You read that in the report correctly. And what this would do is accomplish the design similar to what Councilor Seymour described. Is this will take the project into the next steps of design and will enable the city to protect those investments as described by Mr. Tripp and hopefully contain those inflationary costs over time. So yes, just to note that this focuses on the design only of the treatment facility only and not the various other elements and phases of the project.
Very good. Yeah, good point. Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
Counselor Smith.
Thank you. To be completely transparent, this is a very torn decision for me on how I'm going to vote. The dollars are allocated for this year. I hesitate to hold on any kind of design because it could end up costing us money in the long run, for one. Two, I don't necessarily agree that we are on the right timeline for Water 2025. I haven't decided through all of the data if that's necessarily in and of itself needed at this point in time. And so this whole criteria for getting this design approval is kind of twofold here. Holding criteria could change for design if we don't complete it now, but it also could increase costs. So I'm very on the fence about this, but as dollars are allocated for completing this project, I will be in support of completing the design, completing the design phase of this portion. I'd like to see where this takes us as far as making sure that we are in fact on the right path. So I will be in support of this. However, I will be standing on my principle that we need to continue to find creative ways that this cost isn't falling on taxpayer dollars, that it's affordable and that it's manageable, not only for our residents, but for staff.
Thank you. Counselor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be voting in support of this tonight. I too have toured the Semper water treatment facility and have seen it aging in place as well. I do believe that the dollars are allocated for this previously, so I think we're good with that. And then I believe that the return on investment clearly outweighs the cost of this. So I will be in support tonight. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues for your comments. I'm curious with the $4 million per year in repair. When you say repair, how long is that ongoing? I imagine at some point some of that drops off. If you repair something, you're not repairing it every single year. I imagine there's parts and pieces that get repaired. The next year, there's going to be parts and pieces that get repaired. Is that an accurate thought?
Thank you. I think it would be prudent to invite Max Kirschbaum, Public Works and Utilities Director, to comment on maintenance and construction operation of the facility related to that $4 million. There are a lot of variables that go in, and he's the city's engineer relative to the operation of the facility. Mr. Kirschbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. This is Max Kirschbaum, Public Works and Utilities. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm connecting by telephone.
We can hear you, Mr. Kirschbaum.
Okay. To answer that question, the $4 million is an estimated annual amount just to keep Semper operating at a current capability. Because we embarked on this path 6 years ago with the intent to ultimately close and decommission Semper in the year 2040, we are already on a pathway where we are making operational maintenance, repair, and upgrade decisions based on that pathway. So, for example, some of those works are already being deferred because we have the ability to manage this plant smartly by a very qualified staff to get us to 2040. So the notion of $4 million a year is an estimated amount that if we deviate from the path that we are on, which would provide the first phase, if approved for construction later, would have us producing water at a new plant by the year 2025. If we deviate from that path, it is very likely that we will have to begin a different course of repair, maintenance, and upgrade for Semper just to keep it operating at its current capacity until such time as this plant ultimately is constructed in a replacement form.
Mayor Pro Tem, does that answer your question?
I think it solidifies my problem with this is we're going to be painted into a corner. Maybe we are already painted into that corner. And I'm concerned about the path forward. And to date, we have not heard an alternate path in order to fund this water plant that we're being told we need aside from rates. So I can't support this in the current path as far as how that's going to be funded. And I understand that this isn't, this is a huge investment towards that path that to date is going to be funded off of ratepayers. So I just want to, dig into that a little bit and have people understand my issue with this.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, as I mentioned before, probably not all that clearly, I'm not asking you this evening to make that decision. I'm acknowledging that we have to talk more about that. There's disagreement as to how to pay for this and on what schedule. What Director Kirschbaum is explaining is that if we defer from the schedule that we've been on for the last 6 years, there will be an annual cost of $4 million a year. We're hoping to not do that, but we're open to that conversation and also the conversation about how this is financed. That's reviewed every year. So I'm not asking you to be painted or feeling like you're painted into a corner. I'm asking you to keep this moving because time value is money. And I think it would be a mistake to not continue with the design and have all the information you need as you make those difficult decisions in the future. Thanks.
So I
Mayor Pro Tem.
appreciate Mr. Tripp's clarification there. So let me ask you this, Mr. Tripp. If we approve this tonight and we move forward as being asked, which it sounds like you have the votes to do, but I'm trying to understand how I can get on board with what you're asking. And we go down that path and we have that conversation we've asked for and we get more information, and say you decided that this isn't the right path after we put this money in it. I mean, that's basically thrown away money, right? Am I looking at that incorrectly?
We are not going to come back and tell you that building this water treatment plant is not the right path, not this staff. The timing of that and how it gets funded is something that we have, that are some levers that we can move. But this plant needs to be built.
Okay. I appreciate your point of view and your transparency and your view of this. I'm still not there and I can't support it. I will do my best to work with the group as we move this forward, as it sounds like this is going to be moving forward tonight. So thank you for the conversation.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for voicing your concerns and explaining them to the rest of us. I will be joining the majority of my colleagues voting yes for this tonight. I think the staff report very clearly laid out, quite a bit of things that my colleagues have already mentioned, but one thing that I haven't heard tonight is the risk to residents, understanding the vulnerabilities of the treatment capacity that we currently have at Semper is something that is concerning and alarming to me, and particularly the vulnerability to treating water if there is a forest fire in our watershed, recognizing forest fire season has been extended and has been more extreme in the last few years. Additionally, I recognize the concern about having ratepayers face the burden of having to update a significant piece of our infrastructure. However, I actually believe that approving the design tonight puts us in a more competitive and better situation to find one of those creative solutions for how are there other options? We have heard that there might be an infrastructure bill as early, compromised as early as end of next week. That may happen, it may not, but I will tell you we will be more competitive the closer we get to shovel ready. So I am not prepared to compound the costs for our existing residents if we don't figure out another way to fund this by deferring and having a $10.4 million bill increase each year. I want to make sure that we have the ability to provide safe, dependable, compliant water even in extreme events. And I would like to be as competitive as possible looking at grants or funding from our federal government or the state government if that becomes available. So I will be voting yes tonight. And I appreciate the conversation, the staff report, and our partners. It looks through the staff report that they actually, through their engineering design, were all ready to find some cost-saving measures from what we had originally contemplated for this design. I'm hoping there'll be more of those in the future. So thank you very much. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think that you bring up a lot of good, valuable points, but I wanted to address one that maybe not the best, most advantageous position that the city's in. One of my questions a couple meetings ago, probably a month and a half ago, was about if there was fire in the watershed, what our current plan is. Just so the public understands, and this is information that I'm making my decision off of, that our other water plant could continue to operate and provide drinking water to folks. But we potentially, if it was in one of the hottest months, what we were told is we might have to lessen outdoor use of water, is what we were told. So just so that everybody understands some of the information, if you weren't able to hear that meeting, that's information I'm basing my decision off of as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would also encourage folks to look at the staff report that gave a much more detailed explanation of our vulnerabilities, which to my eye looked more dire than what had originally been described to us in that very brief one-off conversation. So I think after the analysis, it kind of led through the different vulnerabilities and the steps the city would have to take to comply with potentially boil orders. Were listed in there as one of the potential. There was a list of things that I guess I'm not prepared to gamble with. With that being said, I think we're ready for the roll call vote.
Councillor Scully.
Yes.
Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Councillor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
No.
Mayor Seitz.
Yes.
And Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Item 10B, Engineering Services Contract with CDM Smith Inc. passes 6-0. I'm sorry, 5-1, pardon me.
The next item before us is item 10C. This is an agreement for labor law legal services. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to enter into agreement with Engler, Callaway, Bastine, and Saga. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. LLC for work related to labor law matters in the amount not to exceed $50,000.
Councillor Scully.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on this item? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Councillor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
Mayor Seitz.
Yes.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
And Councillor Scully.
Yes.
Item 10C passes 6-0.
The next item before us is item 10D. Again, another contract for legal services. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I move to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Hamrer, Rodriguez, Altstrander, and Dingus PC to provide legal services on an as-needed basis to acquire interest in land for capital improvement projects of the city that may require the use of eminent domain.
Councillor Scully.
I second.
There has been a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on item 10D? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Councillor Bowles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMott.
Yes.
Mayor Seitz.
Yes.
Councillor Seymour.
Yes.
Councillor Scully.
Yes.
And Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Item 10D passes 6-0.
All right, the next item before us is to hold a discussion about the city's response to COVID-19 and possible next steps. City manager Tripp, can I get an estimation of how long of a presentation that is? I think there might be some desire to have a brief break.
I would say 15 minutes.
Hearing that, I would ask that we take just a quick 5-minute break.
Or that 4-year-old with a Mark
Day. Sorry about the tough questions, but I was actually just telling you, you were asking some great questions. That's not my backyard. Well, and the concern for risk and safety of people and accessibility via bike and walking. Stores, restaurants. I mean, that. So I guess that's what you're down the road, actually. Yeah. No, I haven't quite done it, no, I better 16 minutes. We better keep it 15 minutes, right?
Not on you, on me for sure,
Oh, yeah.
Well, you did the job.
I'm curious.
What's good?
I can see that all shining. Yeah, I see bars in there and orange six. I'm just saying, if I drive home, I don't like it. Yeah, because it just gets stuck. No. It's a I was like
Members of council, our public here tonight, we're going to reconvene. The item before us is to hold a discussion about the city's response to COVID-19 and possible next steps. Deputy City Manager Dorr, can you please lead this discussion or kick it off at least?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to invite Sarah Borgers to the podium. Sarah, thank you.
Hi, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. As Mr. Dorr said, my name is Sarah Borgers. I'm the Water Resources and Quality Manager in Public Works, and I am standing in for Director Kirschbaum tonight to give what may be, if it's Council's pleasures, one of our final data presentations for COVID. So I'll start off before we get into, we just have the standard 2 slides that you've seen a number of times now. Before we get into those slides, I will mention that we are just about at 1 month without any positive COVID-19 hits in our employee group. So that's a major win for us. And then if we want to skip to the first slide here. So this is the 14-day rolling value for hospital admissions for Adams County. And as you can see, we continue to roll at kind of a low level. The red line there at 2 hospital admissions per 100,000 was a trigger for moving back into the dial. As you can see, we are quite below that. If we want to move to the next slide. So this is essentially the same graph, but for Jefferson County, and continuing to see those hospitalization rates drop. So that is additional good information for us as we consider, or as council considers next steps, which I believe, I was going to say Mr. Opie, but Mr. Dorr, I think I'm passing it off to CMO to discuss next steps.
Thank you, Ms. Borgers.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Yes, I'd like to invite Deputy City Manager Barbara Opie, who we see now. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Joining us on screen to talk a little bit about council's request for discussion related to in-person study sessions and other matters. Ms. Opie?
Thank you very much, Larry. What we have for you tonight, first off, we can take the data numbers off the screen now at this point. We had identified with City Council, there had been an inquiry about when we would be able to get the study sessions back in person. And what we are recommending is that if Council's desire to do so, that we would start next week, allowing for the Council to come in. What we'd recommend is just a transition to allow us a few other nuances to get finalized would be to have City Council be in person, but to still continue to have it remote for the public for just one more time. And then August 2nd would be back in person. So we respectfully request that that be considered for for moving forward. Allows us to get some of the technical components resolved as well as security components.
Would you like me to poll my colleagues with that question?
If that would be the Council's will, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. It is a little embarrassing for me because I did receive an email on Thursday saying I should let the chamber know we'd be open to the public for study sessions on the 19th. So I did just tell the entire Westminster chamber during my live stream today that information, but I am happy to accommodate personally staff's request for an additional week and just have a little bit of egg on my face. No big deal. But I would like to hear from my colleagues about this. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am excited for us to get back together elbow to elbow in the conference room to discuss business moving forward. I always enjoy that opportunity to work things out with my colleagues face to face. So I'm definitely excited to get back and we'll defer to staff as far as open to the public. I think just a short delay on that. I would just like to add as part of that, I think we should further on the discussion of how we can in the future also accommodate people, including city staff as we move forward, or counselors for emergencies to utilize the technology that we've brought in. So that's a discussion for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see in the queue, Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I did ask a question earlier. I'm not sure if it was answered in an email, but this kind of relates to Ms. Opie's question to us. But currently, we're in an emergency order state for Westminster. And what does that look like as far as us ending that and bringing a complete full circle of everyone back to council chambers and dais?
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Actually, a perfect segue, if Ms. Opie would allow it, for the presentation that I was prepared to make next, which is our monthly emergency declaration update.
Mr. Frankel, can you hold off and I'll quickly poll my colleagues on her proposal first, starting with Councilor Voles.
Yes, I support the recommendation. The ask, yes.
Mayor Pro Tem DeMont?
I guess I'll defer to staff. We have some important things coming up on a timeline. It would have been nice to be in face-to-face with my colleagues, but they need another week, so be it.
My understanding from the request is council would be together in person on the 19th. It would just not be open to the public.
Correct. Apologies if I made that unclear.
Would staff still be in person then? Just like we are right now? Or?
We would probably do one more hybrid like this where staff can be remote as well. But that have council there, and then we'll obviously try to have the folks that are doing presentations in person. I believe we do have an outside guest next week that is is out of state.
Okay, that works for me.
Thank you.
Councilor Smith, are you comfortable with just talking specifically about study sessions being in person with council next week and then open to the public in August?
I understand the ask. Thank you. I was looking more for a full picture answer from Mr. Frankel because the reason that we're in a hybrid approach is because of the emergency declaration. And so the only way to have that is to be in an emergency declaration. So I'd like an understanding as far as the timeline of when we're going to, or when it's proposed by staff that we're going to remove it. Is it after
then we'll get his answer. I didn't realize that it was relevant for you answering this portion, but I understand that now. So, Councilor, before we get that answer, I'll just finish with Councilor Scully. Are you comfortable?
I am in support of the ask. let me beat a dead horse. Just as a reminder, I will not be here next week, but
Thank you.
I am in support.
Okay. And Mr. Frankel, I apologize for cutting you off. You had a better read than I did.
No problem. I wanted to let council know as part of the monthly emergency declaration update that it would be our recommendation, I believe, to put forward an ordinance modifying the remote meeting options for City Council on Monday, the 26th of July for a first reading. If council were willing to consider that ordinance, you could have tools available to continue with remote participation for certain meetings, even once the emergency declaration ended. If that was council's desire, second reading could be August 9th, and we have prepared a resolution for council to end the emergency declaration on August 9th. That way you would still have the meeting remote participation options and have ended the local emergency declaration. But I will need some feedback from the group if it's possible. So first, I suppose if you have any questions generally, I would like to talk a little about the specifics once you've had a chance to ask any kind of general questions.
Councillor Bowles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I want to follow up on Councillor Seymour's earlier ask. If we have a reason to be out of town, that happens to fall, for a family reason, emergency, but we do have the opportunity or the time to get online and be in a meeting. Will we have that potential, or is that something that we're looking for? Because what we do now is we excuse ourselves. We're out of town, we're excused, but there are times where maybe I could get on at 7 o'clock at night. I've done everything I need to, but maybe somewhere else. So I have my computer with me. Is that an option? Is that one of the things we're looking at? Because I would strongly support that. I think that's a good option for us.
I believe that would be an option available to council if that's something you as a body like to consider. The remote participation could be if you're out of town or if you're unable to make it into City Hall, illness, whatever.
Yeah, right.
You could still log in remotely. The question I would have is how broad of remote participation is council comfortable with, and whether that should apply to all settings, specifically quasi-judicial hearings on land use applications. If we could put language into your code that allows for remote participation in meetings, but limits on that. If there's a preference to do land use matters in person, face-to-face, I think there could be a benefit to that because you have the evidence presented to you, you have control over the record, you have your witnesses testifying in front of you. So that could be one limitation that might be part of that ordinance, that you would have remote participation, except in quasi-judicial hearings. The other question I would have is whether council is comfortable doing executive sessions remotely, or if you would prefer that those be conducted face-to-face.
Thank you. I think we do need to give feedback and thought to both of those. Councillor Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Frankel, for those interesting proposals. I'm very much in support of going forward with lifting our emergency proclamation, or I don't know what we're going to call it, but emergency issue anyway, in August. Really interesting ideas, though, about would it be okay to do remote, quasi-judicial, and executive sessions? Those seem to have more of a legal pressure to them. And that makes me leery about allowing those to be remote, because I just feel like maybe they should be more in person. But I'm wondering if maybe I'm being if I'm overthinking it. So I will continue to think on that, but thank you. I think those were interesting ideas.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. The July 26th, that's a council meeting, correct? Okay.
It is, yes.
And would we go over those limitations and thoughts as far as what could be outlined in that ordinance in a study session on July 19th?
Glad to raise the issue. Absolutely. Continue the conversation on the 19th. Really, those are the limitations to remote participation that come to mind. That's why I raised those two specifically for you to think about, see how comfortable council is having quasi-judicial hearings remotely or in person, and having executive sessions remotely versus in person.
Okay. Yes, I mean, I obviously I'll need my council to have a majority, but I'm in favor of adding that to a council agenda for study session to discuss more the ins and outs as far as what that hybrid approach would look like. Like how many, can 3 counselors be out at one time or 1 counselor be out at a hybrid option? So I think there's a little bit more detail that we need to get into as far as what we as a body see appropriate. So I would move to ask my colleagues to add it to the study session agenda. And then I'm okay with removing the emergency declaration on August 9th. And then there was something that just escaped my mind. I'll come back to it if I remember.
I think it was probably the question about the study session.
Thank you. And as long as we're in person, I'll defer to staff on getting together a study session without the public just yet.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one thing, Mr. Frankel, that I'm leery of, I think that if we can make it for those like quasi-judicial and executive sessions, I think it makes sense. My hesitancy to say that they have to be in person is really what we've seen in the last 16 months of our lives. Prior to this time, if I had the sniffles or a sore throat, I'm going to tough it out and say, stay away from me. We've now entered into kind of some new territory where people's freedom or ability to move was asked to stay at home and quarantine for 14 days. So I would hate to be into a position as a council person if an important land use hearing came up, and there was some sort of public health thing like this, that I wouldn't be able to participate because of those kind of constraints. And so I would be curious about maybe some sort of, detailed guidance around maybe situations where it comes to health being the reason why we couldn't be in person or something like that if we're going to limit it. Because I do understand, like, the other thing, I guess, and this is more for the council that I'm concerned about, I don't want to become laxed in, our duties to be here. But at the same time, there are those times where we go on family vacation and Monday night we, are sitting around. So I think there's a lot to think about. And I think we should be, it warrants a bigger discussion, I guess, but those are just some of my initial thoughts about it. I certainly think that we've seen a shift in the way that the world works. I think that most of us who have office jobs are seeing a flex kind of work life that, most companies weren't prepared to do prior. So I think that we could do it professionally if we do it right, but, I definitely think it warrants a bigger conversation.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess another thought would be, I'd be curious to know what our sister cities have chosen to do as well. And if there's any discussion among those sister cities, why they chose the directions they chose, just maybe they have thought of something that we didn't. And so I'm just curious what they've done.
Thank you, Councilor Scully. So I have to say, I really like Councilor Smith's request. I think this does warrant further examination, kind of to Councilor Scully's point, what are other communities doing? What are they contemplating? I will tell you, I have no problem with folks working remotely or participating remotely for most meetings, but quasi-judicial and executive session, I do I do have a little bit of pause, particularly quasi-judicial. When folks are coming, we're making a binding decision. I do think we owe it to our residents to be available for them to look us in the eyes and to let us know if at all possible. And I recognize because of our emergency declaration, that was different this year. But, you know, I do think it's a better practice. I will tell you, as chairing my very first public land use hearing, having it being partially virtual, that was not ideal, you know. So I guess I would prefer to figure out, to be really thoughtful about how we do that. On the other side, I do think some flexibility allows actually more resident participation. So it doesn't make sense that council has to be here and perhaps staff who are presenting have to be here. But similar to how we've always been able to receive emails that become part of the public record, do we still get you know, voicemails, or, you know, are there multiple ways for people to participate in that public hearing? So maybe these are things like this. I know staff is much smarter than me on this and has a lot more experience that we could consider at our next study session to determine the best path forward. But just to give staff a flavor of what my thoughts are at this point. All right, are there any further questions or reports? All right, was that last? Well, I think our city attorney was correct. It really was only about 15 minutes. The time is 9:47 and this can, oh, do you, time is 9:47 and this concludes a Westminster City Council meeting.
Yeah.